All right, fam, now for our feature story of the day. Bitcoin will hit 1 million per coin during the Trump presidency, which means by the year 2028, which ironic enough is the time of the next halving and the next presidential election. So let's break this down, and this is as per Arthur Hayes. Just blaze. And here are some of the key points. Bitcoin could hit an astronomical 1 million price target, which is virtually a 10x from here by the time of the next halving. According to Arthur Hayes, just blaze. And if you're not familiar with him, he is a billionaire, very smart man, early Bitcoin adopter, and the co-founder of the BitMEX exchange, which goes back a long time ago. It used to be like the number one exchange for doing what is it called, trading with leverage and like all that kind of stuff. And then FTX kind of took over. I think it was like a government coup working alongside compromised insiders like Gary Gensler. That's a story for another day. But anyways, while pro-Bitcoin initiatives from the government get all the attention, crypto investors should also keep their eye on the factors impacting the U.S. economy. Fiscal monetary policies embraced by the U.S. government could lead to money flowing into Bitcoin at a rapid pace over the next 3 years. And speaking of money rapidly flowing into Bitcoin, I also want to share this tweet from Max Keiser a little earlier off the back of this news from Trump. It looks like he was on his private jet. President Trump says he selected a new Federal Reserve chair and that he'll be announced very soon. Printer coming, Bitcoin, rocket ship to the moon. Max says, can't wait. Bitcoin 2.2 million in play. See you on the other side. That's what I'm saying. 2.2 million in play, bitty broskies. Now that Bitcoin has hit the 100,000 level, the future looks bright indeed. Some forecasts them pretty little bitty hitting a milli potentially this year. It could happen, I'm just saying. But it could take a full decade for Bitcoin to hit a million mark. I disagree with that. I'm highly skeptical it would take that long. However, Arthur Hayes says it will happen by the year 2028 or as early as 2028. And I can totally see that coming into fruition. There's a number of different ways to come up with a price of 1 million per bitty. One popular approach is to look at the current Bitcoin adoption rates around the world, then extrapolate how fast Bitcoin can grow over the next decade. The more use cases you can find for the bitty and the faster the Bitcoin grows, the higher the price target becomes. In fact, Kathy Wood of ARK Invest came up with her original 1 million price target for Bitcoin. And since then, she's raised the goalposts, actually many times, because we have covered it here on the pod. Or you can choose to compare Bitcoin to a specific asset and then assume the valuation gap between Bitcoin and that asset will narrow over time, for example, against gold. Right now, the asset that everyone is using for comparison is physical gold, which has an approximate market valuation of $20 trillion. So Bitcoin grows from a 2 trillion asset, and as of today is 2.1 trillion, into a 20 trillion asset, which is a mere 10x. That would imply a 10x return on investment. So given the Bitcoin current price of 100 G's, that leads to the future price target of 1 million and makes it sound so very realistic. I genuinely feel we can 10x. If not this cycle, it will absolutely happen next cycle. And again, the next halving cycle begins in 2028. Ironic, it's exactly when Arthur Hayes foresees it occurring. But there is a third wave to value Bitcoin, and it focuses on how specific government fiscal and monetary policies can impact the crypto market. This is the approach that Hayes uses in his Bitcoin 2025 presentation. He just spoke at the Bitcoin Vegas conference and gave his speech on why he believes, Bitcoin's going to hit a milli. He thinks the U.S. government could inject nearly $9 trillion in liquidity into the economy over the next 3 years. Pretty little money printer go. Brr. Now that's significantly more than the $4 trillion that the U.S. government injected into the economy during the COVID pandemic of 2020. When that happened into 2020, 2021, the bitty price soared from 7,000 to 70,000 for a 10x return. In fact, we went from a bottom of 3,500, and I remember it like yesterday. In March of 2020, due to COVID, we crashed from like 7,000 back down to 3,500. Then 1 year later, in March of 2021, Bitcoin was above 60,000. So I don't know the exact number there, but it was a substantial run up in just a 12-month period. So if history were to rhyme, just that same run up, we'd surpass 1 million per coin. So it can happen a lot easier than you guys think. So why would the U.S. government want to inject $9 trillion into the economy? Well, it sounds like they have to. It comes down to the difficult macroeconomic problems facing the U.S. government. There's massive trade deficits with trading partners around the world. There's also massive fiscal deficits with no end in sight to government spending. And there are warning signs of recession and inflation everywhere. In many ways, 2025 has been a crash course study on how hard it is to solve these problems. For example, if you try to bring down government spending with the Doge cost-cutting programs, you risk a public backlash. And if you try bringing down the trade deficits using tariffs, you face a global investor backlash. Well, guess what? You can't tariff the pretty little bitty. Now, in the scenario envisioned by Hayes, the U.S. government is showing and going to find it harder and harder to find buyers for the debt. It can't offer higher interest rates on that debt to attract buyers because of the cost of the debt service is already staggeringly high. So we'll have to resort to more and more creative measures. And one of these, says Hayes, is a potential change to how the bank can buy U.S. government debt. This could lead to a bank bond buying bonanza, or as Max says, the fiat bond apocalypse. It's amongst us. At the same time, if tariffs lead to an economic pain for everyday Americans, then the U.S. government will be forced to do anything to reduce some of the pain. Once midterm elections roll around in 2026, the pressure will intensify, and as longtime Bitcoin investors will tell you, this always leads to the same solution: pretty little money printer go burr. But what happens between now and the next halving? Within the next 3 years, many people assume the path to 1 million for the biddy is paved with the pro-crypto policies being rolled out by the Trump admin. They assume that the creation of the strategic biddy reserve will lead to significant government buying of Bitcoin, thereby pushing up the price over time. They assume that the new crypto legislation, combined with the hands-off approach to the crypto regulation, will be enough to juice the price of the biddy. However, if Bitcoin is going to hit 1 million during the Trump presidency, it'll likely require quite a bit of economic pain amongst the way. It might even require global investors to lose faith in the U.S. economy. I dare say they already have, especially in the U.S. dollar. And all of this very bad for America, of course. But at the same time, it could be very good for the biddy if it leads to new investor inflows into crypto. And so be careful what you wish for. And there you have it, yo. Let me know your thoughts. Will 1 million biddy price by the year 2028, as per Arthur Hayes, just blaze? Quantitative easing will shoot the Bitcoin to the moon. I must say I love Bitcoin, but everything's going. I just can't see how the Bitcoin goes 500,000 this year, even 1 million. But it's supposed to get to 1 million by 2028 if it has a big move at some point. I got a hunch in the next Black Rock fork, they will add extra sats, 1 billion sats instead of 100 million, 10x in their own stack, sort of printing money out of thin air. Keynesian economics has messed up the entire world. We need to get back to the scarce asset and the real value. JB, nobody wants long-term bonds right now. They have the auction and nobody showed up precisely. Greg says that would require the miner code change for the divisibility of the biddy. Just add the 2 decimal points. Also requires that all the miner nodes keep the miners away from Peter Schiff, is all I'm saying. In full faith, agree with code change. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to continue with the uncensored version of the pod. We're going to end the YouTube transmission. So head on over to the Rumble. It's rumble.cryptonewsalerts.net.